My child, there are moments when someone finally understands your silence, and suddenly everything they thought they knew begins to look different. That is where your soulmate is standing now. Something about what you carried alone has finally reached them, not as gossip, not as a dramatic story, but as a quiet truth they can no longer overlook. And what affected them most was not simply what happened to you. It was the realization that you kept moving forward while so much remained unspoken. Don't skip, because the part that touched them most deeply was something you may never have considered important. For a long time, they noticed certain things about you without fully understanding them. The way you sometimes became quiet when emotions grew intense. The way you could care deeply while still protecting a small private part of yourself. The way you gave reassurance to others even when you were the one who could have used reassurance. They noticed these things, but they did not know the story underneath them. They may have wondered why you hesitated at certain moments, why you needed time before trusting what felt good, or why you occasionally pulled inward when someone came too close to the places in your heart you rarely showed. Now those pieces are beginning to connect. And the connection is changing the way they see you. What surprised them was your strength did not look dramatic. It looked ordinary. It looked like waking up and continuing. It looked like laughing when you had reasons to be quiet. It looked like helping people while privately carrying questions of your own. It looked like becoming gentle instead of becoming distant. That realization stayed with them. Because suddenly, the qualities they admired in you began to carry a deeper meaning. Your patience was not simply patience. Your compassion had history behind it. Your careful way of loving was not uncertainty. It was the wisdom of someone who had learned that meaningful things deserve to be handled slowly. And when your soulmate understood that, something inside them softened. There was no grand speech. No perfect sentence. Just a moment when they could no longer pretend that your story had not affected them. They began replaying little memories. A conversation where you changed the subject just before revealing too much. A moment when they misunderstood your distance. A time when they expected you to explain yourself, without realizing how difficult explanation might have felt. And one thought kept returning: I wish I had understood sooner. Stay till the end, because this is where the truth becomes more personal. Their emotion was not only sadness for what you experienced. It was admiration for what you chose to become afterward. They realized you could have allowed difficult seasons to make you stop believing in connection, yet some part of you remained open. Maybe cautious. Maybe quieter than before. But open. And that mattered to them more than you know. There is something powerful about discovering that a person's tenderness was not created by an easy road. Sometimes tenderness is a decision. Sometimes kindness is something a person chooses after learning exactly how much kindness can matter. Your soulmate is beginning to see that in you. And it has forced them to look at themselves too. Have they been patient enough with you? Have they listened beyond your words? Have they mistaken your independence for not needing anyone? Have they expected you to move faster emotionally simply because they could not see what was happening beneath the surface? Those questions became difficult to ignore. But here is the unexpected part: this realization did not make them see you as fragile. It did the opposite. It made them understand how much courage has quietly existed inside you all along. Something important is waiting for you, because there was one detail that affected them more than everything else. They learned that there were moments when you could have explained everything, moments when you could have used your past to justify your reactions, moments when you could have demanded that everyone understand you, and yet you often chose silence instead. Not because your feelings did not matter. Not because your experience was small. But because you did not want your pain to become the center of every relationship you entered. Think about what that says about you. You wanted to be known for who you were becoming, not only for what you had survived. And when your soulmate realized this, they could not easily move past it. Their emotion came quietly at first. A long pause. A memory returning. Another detail suddenly making sense. Then another. Until the picture of you they carried in their mind became fuller, warmer, more human. They started understanding why certain words mattered to you. Why consistency mattered. Why small promises mattered. Why feeling emotionally safe mattered more than dramatic gestures ever could. And perhaps for the first time, they understood that loving you well was never about rescuing you. You never needed someone to arrive and rewrite your entire story. What you needed was someone willing to respect the story that already existed. Someone who would not rush the chapters you were still learning how to speak about. Someone who could sit beside your silence without demanding that it immediately become an explanation. That realization changed something in them. The emotion they felt was not pity. It was tenderness mixed with responsibility. The kind of responsibility that whispers, if this person trusts me with their heart, I want to handle it carefully. And that thought stayed longer than they expected. Don't skip, because there is another layer they have only just started recognizing. While learning about what you went through, they also discovered how many times you continued showing love when nobody fully understood what it cost you. You celebrated people while carrying your own unanswered questions. You listened to others while keeping parts of your own story private. You encouraged people through moments that reminded you of things you had once faced alone. And somehow, you kept your heart from becoming hard. Your soulmate is realizing that this may be one of the rarest things about you. Not perfection. Not endless strength. But your ability to remain sincere after life taught you to be careful. That is what they could not hold back from feeling. Because when someone truly cares for you, discovering the hidden meaning behind your strength can change the entire relationship. Suddenly they do not only remember what you said. They remember what you could not say. They do not only notice when you smiled. They wonder what it took for you to keep that softness. They do not only see the distance you sometimes created. They begin to understand that perhaps you were asking a quiet question without words: is it safe for me to be fully seen here? And now they want their actions to answer that question differently. Not with huge promises. Not with dramatic declarations. But with steadiness. With patience. With the kind of presence that does not disappear the moment things become emotionally complicated. Something inside them now understands that your trust cannot be rushed, and strangely, they no longer want to rush it. They want to earn the parts of you that cannot be reached through words alone. They want to understand why certain memories still make you thoughtful. They want to notice when you say, "I'm fine," but really mean, "I'm processing." They want to become better at recognizing the difference between you needing space and you quietly hoping someone will stay near without pushing. And this is where the story begins to turn. Because their realization about your past has awakened a realization about their future. If they want to be part of your life in a meaningful way, they cannot love only the easy version of you. They have to understand the thoughtful version, the cautious version, the version that sometimes needs reassurance without knowing how to request it, the version that learned to stand alone but still secretly hopes that one day standing beside someone will feel just as safe. Stay till the end, because the strongest emotion came when they understood something they had never considered before: you were never asking for perfection from them. You were asking for sincerity. Maybe they once thought they needed the perfect words to reach you. Now they see that what matters is whether the words remain true tomorrow. Maybe they thought they needed a dramatic gesture. Now they understand that you notice consistency more than spectacle. Maybe they believed your heart was difficult to reach. Now they realize it was simply waiting for evidence that it would be treated gently once it opened. And that realization broke through every assumption they had carried about you. For a moment, they stopped thinking about what they wanted from this connection and started thinking about what kind of person they wanted to become inside it. That is important. Because sometimes the deepest turning point in love is not when someone finally says, "I choose you." Sometimes it is when they quietly ask themselves, "Am I becoming someone who knows how to choose you well?" Your soulmate is standing near that question now. And they are not taking it lightly. There is still something they have not said. Something they almost expressed when all of these realizations came together, but emotion interrupted the moment before the words could fully arrive. It was not a confession about the past. It was something about what they want to do differently from this point forward. And when those words finally surface, you may understand why learning the truth about what you went through did more than move them emotionally. It changed the way they are preparing to meet your heart now. Something changed in the silence after they learned the truth, and it was not the kind of change that disappears after one emotional night. Your soulmate began looking at old moments differently, almost as though they were returning to conversations they had once experienced with only half the information. Suddenly, a sentence you said months ago carried another meaning. A hesitation they once misunderstood made sense. Even the moments when you seemed unusually strong began to feel different, because now they understood that strength was not always effortless for you. Sometimes it was simply what you chose because you did not know whether anyone else would stay long enough to carry part of the weight with you. And this realization has stayed with them. Don't skip, because what happened next was quieter than a dramatic confession, but far more meaningful. They started thinking about the times you gave them patience while they were still trying to understand you. They remembered moments when they were uncertain, moments when they may have stepped back, moments when their own confusion made them less attentive than you deserved. And instead of defending themselves inside their mind, they began asking a different question: what was this person feeling while I was trying to figure everything out? That question changed the atmosphere completely. Because once someone begins looking beyond their own perspective, love starts becoming something deeper than attraction. It becomes awareness. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that there were moments when you were not asking them to solve anything. You were simply hoping they would notice. You were not waiting for a grand promise. You were waiting for consistency. You were not demanding that someone erase the difficult chapters behind you. You simply wanted proof that the chapters ahead could feel different. And what affected them most was realizing how rarely you actually asked for that proof out loud. You watched. You listened. You paid attention to patterns. You noticed whether words matched actions. You noticed who remained gentle after the excitement faded. You noticed who respected your boundaries without treating them like rejection. And perhaps your soulmate did not understand before why those small things mattered so much to you. Now they do. Stay till the end, because there is one memory they keep returning to. It may have seemed insignificant when it happened. Perhaps you were having an ordinary conversation. Perhaps they asked you something personal and you answered with a smile that was just slightly too quick. Perhaps you said, "It's okay," when the subject touched something deeper than you wanted to explain. At the time, they accepted your words exactly as they were. But after learning more about what you went through, that memory returned differently. They could almost hear the space between your sentences. They wondered what you were protecting. They wondered whether you had wanted to tell them more but were waiting to see if they would create enough safety for the truth. That thought reached them deeply. Not because they believe they failed you completely, but because they finally understand how much trust can hide inside a simple conversation. Every time you showed them something real about yourself, even something small, you were offering a piece of a story you had learned to protect. And they did not always realize how meaningful that was. Now they do. There is an important difference between discovering someone's past and truly understanding what that past taught them. Your soulmate is moving into that second kind of understanding. They are beginning to see that some of your habits were not walls against love. They were ways of making sure love was real before you leaned into it. Your caution was not coldness. Your questions were not suspicion. Your independence was not proof that you wanted to do everything alone. Sometimes independence develops because a person becomes accustomed to handling things quietly. And when someone like that finally allows another person to help, even in a small way, it means more than most people realize. Something important is waiting for you, because your soulmate has started noticing the moments when you allowed them closer. They remember the first time you told them something you did not usually share. The first time you let them see uncertainty instead of confidence. The first time you admitted that something mattered to you more than you wanted to reveal. Those moments once seemed natural. Now they understand that each one was a doorway. And you did not open those doorways carelessly. That realization made them emotional again, but this time the emotion carried something new: gratitude. Gratitude that you trusted them at all. Gratitude that despite everything life had taught you about protecting your heart, you still allowed them to become important. Gratitude that some part of you saw something worth believing in. And alongside that gratitude came a quiet determination. They do not want to become another reason you feel you must carry everything by yourself. They do not want their presence to feel uncertain. They do not want you constantly wondering whether care will still exist tomorrow. They are beginning to understand that the strongest thing they can offer you may not be intensity. It may be reliability. The phone call they actually return. The conversation they do not avoid. The promise they keep when nobody is watching. The ability to remain calm when you need time to explain what you are feeling. Those things may sound ordinary, but your soulmate now understands that ordinary consistency can become extraordinary when someone has spent too much time depending only on themselves. Don't skip. There is another realization forming, and this one concerns the way they once interpreted your silence. They used to wonder whether your quietness meant you were losing interest, pulling away, or thinking about leaving. Now they are beginning to understand that sometimes your silence means the exact opposite. Sometimes you become quiet because something matters so much that you need time before placing it into words. Sometimes you step inward because you are trying to make sure you respond thoughtfully instead of emotionally. Sometimes you need space not because you want distance, but because you want to return to the conversation with honesty. That understanding could change everything between you. Imagine what happens when someone stops taking your thoughtful pauses personally. Imagine what happens when they stop rushing you to explain yourself and instead become patient enough for the real answer to emerge. That is the kind of shift happening inside your soulmate now. They are learning your emotional language not perfectly, not instantly, but more sincerely than before. And the more they understand, the more they realize how many things about you were hidden in plain sight. Your loyalty. Your restraint. Your way of giving second chances without making a performance of it. Your tendency to remember tiny details people mention casually. Your instinct to make others comfortable even when you are uncertain yourself. These qualities did not appear from nowhere. They were shaped by experience. But here is the part they cannot stop thinking about: experience did not remove your capacity to love. It refined it. You became more intentional. You learned that attention matters. You learned that being present matters. You learned that people remember how they felt around someone long after specific words fade. And without realizing it, you became the kind of person who gives others the very things you once needed yourself. When your soulmate recognized that pattern, they could not hold back. There was something deeply moving about realizing that your softness was not naivety. It was courage. You knew life could disappoint people, yet you continued believing connection could still be meaningful. You knew misunderstandings were possible, yet you continued trying to communicate. You knew people could leave, yet some part of you continued hoping someone might choose to stay. Stay till the end, because this was the moment their thoughts stopped circling around the past and turned toward what might happen next. They began imagining a conversation with you, not one filled with dramatic declarations, but a conversation where they finally say the things they should have understood sooner. They want to tell you that they see your strength differently now. They want you to know they no longer mistake your composure for never needing comfort. They want to say that you do not have to perform happiness around them simply to keep the connection peaceful. They want you to know that being loved should not require hiding every difficult emotion. And somewhere inside them, a sentence has been forming: you should not have had to carry so much alone. But even that sentence feels incomplete, because they know they cannot change what already happened. So another sentence follows it: I want you to know you don't always have to carry things alone with me. Notice the difference. They are not promising to fix your entire world. They are not claiming they can protect you from every disappointment. They are simply beginning to understand what partnership actually means. Sometimes it means saying, "Tell me what you need." Sometimes it means noticing without being told. Sometimes it means respecting silence until the person is ready. And sometimes it means staying present when the conversation becomes uncomfortable instead of disappearing into avoidance. That is the standard your soulmate is quietly setting for themselves now. But here comes the unexpected part. While thinking about everything you went through, they discovered something about themselves that they were not prepared to face. They realized there were moments when they had been afraid of the depth of this connection. Not because they did not care, but precisely because they cared more than they knew how to handle. When someone matters deeply, their vulnerability can feel like a responsibility. Your soulmate may have questioned whether they were ready for that. They may have wondered whether they could give you the steadiness you deserved. And perhaps that uncertainty explains some of their own hesitation. But after learning your truth, something shifted. Instead of asking, "What if I am not ready?" they started asking, "What would it look like to become ready?" That question is important. Growth rarely begins with certainty. It begins when someone decides that the connection matters enough to make them examine their own patterns. And your soulmate is examining theirs now. The ways they communicate. The ways they handle conflict. The moments when they become distant instead of vulnerable. The promises they make too quickly. The feelings they sometimes hide because admitting them would make everything more real. They are realizing that if they want your trust, they must bring honesty to the places where they themselves have been guarded. Something important is waiting for you, because the truth about your journey did not simply reveal who you are. It held up a mirror to who they have been. And that is why their reaction was so powerful. They were not only emotional for you. They were emotional about the possibility that they could have misunderstood someone who had quietly become precious to them. They began remembering every time you showed patience when they were confused. Every time you gave them room to think. Every time you did not demand answers before they were ready. And now they are wondering whether they can return that same grace to you. The answer forming inside them is yes, but they know the answer means nothing without action. So watch for the smaller changes. A little more attentiveness. A little less defensiveness. A willingness to ask instead of assume. A steadier presence. These are the signs of understanding becoming behavior. Because genuine realization does not always arrive with an unforgettable speech. Sometimes it arrives through changed patterns. And something about their pattern is beginning to change. There is still one piece of the story they have not processed completely. One specific thing they learned about the moment you felt most alone changed the way they think about a decision they were already considering. They have not spoken about that decision yet. Perhaps they are still finding the right words. Perhaps they are afraid that saying it too soon will make it feel bigger than they can manage. But the thought has already taken root. And strangely, it is not about repairing your past. It is about showing you something in the present, something that could finally answer a question your heart has quietly carried for longer than anyone realized. The next realization arrived quietly, but it changed the entire direction of what your soulmate had been thinking. Until now, they had been focused on understanding what you went through, replaying the moments they misunderstood, and wondering how they could show up differently. But then one particular detail reached them, and suddenly the question was no longer simply, "How did you survive that?" It became, "How did you still find the courage to care after that?" That question stayed with them longer than anything else. Because when they looked at you again through this new understanding, they noticed something they had taken for granted before: you never made your difficult experiences everyone else's responsibility. You carried lessons from them, yes. You became more careful. You learned to notice patterns. But you still tried to meet people as individuals instead of assuming they would repeat what someone else had done. Your soulmate realized how much emotional maturity that required. Don't skip, because this is where their reaction began moving beyond emotion and into intention. There was a moment when they almost reached for their phone. They wanted to tell you immediately that they finally understood something. They wanted to say that they had been thinking about you differently. But they stopped themselves. Not because the feeling disappeared, but because they suddenly recognized that this moment deserved more than an impulsive message written while emotions were high. They wanted the words to be honest enough to survive beyond one evening. So instead of sending something quickly, they sat with what they were feeling. And that pause mattered. In the past, they may have responded to emotion by saying too much too quickly, or perhaps by saying nothing at all. This time they chose something between those two extremes. They reflected. They asked themselves what exactly they wanted you to know. Was it simply that they felt sorry you had gone through difficult moments? No. That was not enough. Was it that they wished they had understood sooner? That was true, but still incomplete. What they really wanted you to know was that learning your story had changed how seriously they viewed the trust between you. Your trust was no longer something they wanted to assume would always be there. They wanted to respect it. Protect it through consistency. Give it reasons to grow instead of reasons to retreat. And that is when another memory returned. There was a time when you gave them another chance to understand you. Maybe they did not even recognize it as a chance. Perhaps you came back to a conversation after becoming quiet. Perhaps you explained yourself when it would have been easier to walk away. Perhaps you chose patience when misunderstanding could easily have turned into distance. At the time, your soulmate may have thought the moment was small. Now they understand it differently. You were showing them that the connection mattered enough for you to try again. Something important is waiting for you, because when they realized this, one question began repeating inside them: have I shown them the same thing? Not have I said it. Have I shown it? That distinction became impossible to ignore. Words can express affection, but actions create emotional safety. Promises can sound beautiful, but patterns reveal what a person truly values. Your soulmate started comparing what they felt inside with what they had actually demonstrated to you. And they recognized gaps. Maybe they cared more deeply than their behavior sometimes showed. Maybe they assumed you already knew. Maybe they believed that because the connection felt obvious to them, they did not need to communicate everything clearly. But now they understand that nobody should have to guess where they stand when something meaningful is developing. You especially should not have to guess. Not after spending so much time learning how to depend on yourself. That realization did something powerful to them. Instead of making them defensive, it made them more thoughtful. They started thinking about what reassurance would look like without becoming overwhelming. Not constant declarations. Not dramatic promises. Just clarity. The kind of clarity that says, I am here because I want to be. The kind that does not leave you decoding silence. The kind that lets both people breathe because neither one is constantly searching for hidden meanings. Stay till the end, because there is another layer underneath this. Your soulmate has begun realizing that some of the qualities they once admired from a distance are the same qualities they now want to protect within the connection. Your independence, for example. They do not want love to take that from you. They want love to become a place where your independence is respected while your loneliness becomes optional. There is a difference. They do not want you to feel that needing someone makes you weaker. They want you to know that accepting support can exist beside strength. They are beginning to understand that the healthiest version of this connection would not ask either of you to become smaller. It would allow both of you to become more yourselves. And strangely, this is where their emotions became calmer. The initial shock of understanding what you went through began settling into something warmer, something steadier. Respect. They respected you before, but now that respect had depth. They understood that many of the things they loved about your personality were connected to choices you had made again and again. Choosing kindness. Choosing patience. Choosing to hope without ignoring reality. Choosing to try again without pretending the past never happened. And your soulmate found themselves wondering whether they had ever told you how much they admired those choices. Probably not in the way they wanted to now. There are things people notice but never say because they assume another opportunity will come. Another conversation. Another evening. Another perfect moment. But your soulmate has started understanding that appreciation should not always be postponed. Sometimes the most meaningful thing you can tell someone is simply what you have already seen in them. Not what you expect them to become. Not what you need them to change. What you already recognize. They want you to know they recognize you. Not every hidden part. Not every unanswered question, but more than before. And they want to keep learning without forcing you to reveal anything before you are ready. Don't skip, because a small but important decision began forming here. They decided that when the next real conversation happens, they do not want to dominate it with their feelings. That surprised even them. Their first instinct had been to explain how emotional the truth made them, how deeply it affected them, how much they wished they could change certain things. But then they realized something: your story should not become a stage for their reaction. If they truly care, the conversation needs room for you. Room for what you want to say. Room for what you do not want to say. Room for you to correct anything they misunderstood. Room for silence without awkwardness. That is a different kind of listening. And they are preparing themselves for it. They want to ask questions gently, not because they feel entitled to every detail, but because they want to understand you better where you are comfortable being understood. They want to stop filling unknown spaces with assumptions. They want to hear what actually matters to you. Maybe the biggest lesson they have learned is that people often think love means knowing everything about someone. But sometimes love means respecting what you do not know yet. Your soulmate is beginning to appreciate that mystery is not always distance. Sometimes it is simply privacy waiting for trust. And they are becoming more willing to let trust grow naturally. Something important is waiting for you, because the decision they were considering is becoming clearer. It has nothing to do with some dramatic gesture designed to erase every doubt overnight. It is far more personal than that. They are considering becoming more direct about what this connection means to them. For a while, they may have allowed feelings to exist in a space without fully naming them. Perhaps that felt safer. When feelings remain undefined, nobody has to risk hearing an answer they are not ready for. But learning what you carried alone made them question whether leaving important things unsaid is really safer at all. Silence can protect someone temporarily, but it can also create uncertainty. And uncertainty is the very thing they now understand has weighed heavily on you before. So they are asking themselves whether continuing to hide behind ambiguity would be fair. That question is becoming harder for them to avoid. Their heart is not telling them to rush you. It is telling them to become clearer with themselves first. What do they actually want? What are they prepared to offer? What kind of relationship are they capable of building, not merely imagining? These questions are serious, but they are healthy. Because meaningful connection becomes stronger when people stop asking only how intensely they feel and start asking how responsibly they can love. Your soulmate is moving toward that understanding now. And there is something beautiful about the way it is happening. They are not imagining themselves rescuing you. They are imagining themselves walking beside you. That distinction matters. You already built strength before they understood your story. You already learned how to keep going. You already became someone capable of surviving difficult seasons. They do not want to take credit for healing chapters they were never there to witness. They simply want the opportunity to make future chapters feel more shared. Stay till the end, because the next part surprised them the most. When they thought about your future, they realized they did not want you to feel endlessly defined by what happened before. Learning your truth did not make them see you as someone carrying permanent sadness. It made them see how much possibility exists in you. There are still things you want to experience without comparing them to old memories. There are still peaceful moments waiting to become normal. There are still conversations where honesty does not lead to misunderstanding. There are still mornings that can feel lighter simply because you know someone is willing to communicate instead of disappear. Your soulmate began imagining what it would mean to contribute to that kind of future, not by promising perfection, but by creating new evidence. Evidence that people can stay calm during difficult conversations. Evidence that boundaries can be respected without punishment. Evidence that someone can disagree with you and still care about you. Evidence that closeness does not have to cost you your peace. Those thoughts changed their emotional reaction into something resembling hope. And hope feels different from guilt. Guilt looks backward and asks, "What should I have known?" Hope looks forward and asks, "What can I do now?" Your soulmate is beginning to ask the second question more often. They cannot undo the moments when you felt alone. They cannot rewrite every misunderstanding between you. But they can choose what they do with the truth they know now. And that choice is becoming increasingly important to them. There is one thing they especially want to stop doing, assuming that because you are strong, you do not need reassurance. They now understand strength and reassurance are not opposites. A strong person can still appreciate hearing, "I understand." An independent person can still want someone to check in. A calm person can still have moments when they need gentleness. And someone who rarely asks for much may sometimes need the most careful attention, because they have become so accustomed to handling things privately that asking can feel unfamiliar. Your soulmate is beginning to notice that about you. And they are asking themselves how many times you may have needed something simple but chose not to ask because you did not want to feel like a burden. That thought affected them deeply. They want you to know that your feelings do not become inconvenient merely because they require time. They want you to know that communication does not have to happen perfectly. They want you to know that there can be room for unfinished sentences, changed minds, and thoughts you need time to organize. Don't skip, because this is where another piece of their decision finally took shape. They want to give you a choice instead of an expectation. When the moment comes, they do not want to say, "Tell me everything." They want to say, "You can tell me whatever you want me to understand." Those two sentences may sound similar, but emotionally they are worlds apart. One asks for access. The other offers safety. Your soulmate is learning the difference. And that difference may become one of the most important changes in the way they approach you. They are also realizing that they have a story too. Their own fears. Their own reasons for becoming distant sometimes. Their own experiences that shaped how they react when emotions become serious. And if they expect honesty from you, they need to become willing to offer honesty themselves. That may be the hardest part for them. Because it is easier to focus on someone else's vulnerability than to reveal your own. It is easier to say, "I understand you better now," than to admit, "I was afraid too." But they are moving toward that admission. They are beginning to see that the connection cannot deepen if only one person is brave enough to be understood. So when they finally speak, the conversation they imagine now looks different from the one they first imagined. They do not want to arrive with a speech about everything they discovered. They want to arrive as themselves. Honest. Imperfect. Clear. They want to admit where they misunderstood you. They want to tell you where they were uncertain. And perhaps, for the first time, they want to explain why this connection affected them enough to make them nervous in the first place. Something important is waiting for you, because that final part is connected to a truth they have been avoiding about their own feelings. Learning what you went through did not create their care for you. It revealed how deep that care had already become. Their reaction surprised them because it showed them something they could no longer minimize. You had become important to them in ways they had never fully named. Your happiness mattered to them. Your sense of safety mattered. The thought of you feeling misunderstood affected them more than they expected. And once they recognized that, they could not return to pretending the connection was casual inside their heart. They still want to move carefully. They still understand that real trust takes time. But careful no longer means distant. Careful now means intentional. It means choosing words they can stand behind. It means allowing actions to confirm what emotions begin. It means respecting your pace while finally becoming honest about theirs. And just when they thought they had understood everything they needed to understand, another piece of information surfaced, something small on the surface, almost easy to overlook. It was about what you once said you wanted most from someone who truly cared about you. Not a grand gesture. Not constant attention. Something much simpler. And when your soulmate heard what it was, they went completely quiet, because without realizing it, they had already started doing exactly that.